So
definitely.
How did you get your big break with MRN Radio? Tell our viewers that.
Yeah, so, in broadcasting, what I've learned, especially now that I've kind of gone through the process, and I don't want to say I made it because I don't think anybody ever really makes it unless you're, Mike Joy or Rick Allen or the guys that have the big seat, on the networks. But to see where I've come from, it's all about, your experience, right? It's not necessarily the education you get. But at the same time, there's not a one true path to get to motorsports. I chose the local news element, the local sports element. So after college, I worked in a small market out of college, making basically probably enough to qualify for food stamps. Not a lot of money as a weekend sports anchor in Texas, and just kind of bid my time and got a lot of reps on the anchor desk and in the field covering high school football, and was able to go to Texas Motor Speedway, do some stuff, the Dallas Cowboys. So, that's kind of what molded it. But what you do is then you save all these experiences and your best stuff, and you make a resume tape. And at the time that I was in Texas is when Dylan started with MRN. And, I knew at the time racing was ultimately what I wanted to be a part of in motorsports. So he said, hey, if this is something you want to do, start sending your tape. And I did, and I didn't get a lot of feedback, if any, the first couple times. But one thing led to another, and I moved to Charlotte in early 2019, and during that moving process, Ryan Horn, who's still there now, was able to give me a shot at an audition. He said, hey, I know you're moving to Charlotte. We'd love for you to come out to, I think it was the Truck Series at the time, had a qualifying session. We pretended it was a pre-race, and I had an opportunity to do a little pit whip and scene set, and then interview some drivers, before they climbed in to go qualify. And that was it. And the next thing I know is I got an email saying, hey, we had an opening at Road America that year to be a turn announcer. And so I took it, and that was my first race. And then just kind of snowballed from there. Once, I'd like to think I did a good enough job, which is why they brought me back. And every year, I get more and more races and transition to pit road, because that's ultimately what I enjoy doing the most, is telling the stories and being there amongst the thick of things. And so I guess just kind of got lucky with an audition, and I didn't screw it up too bad, so they hired me.
That's great to hear. So what is working with MRN like compared to other big companies like NBC?
Yeah, I actually had a Syracuse student reach out for an interview to kind of discuss, my career, and that question came up as well. It's the fundamentals, I want to say, are the same. You still have to do your preparation, right? You still got to make your notes and talk to people if you can in the garage area, or if you're lucky enough to have their number, reach out. But, MRN being radio, you are the gateway for the listener to paint the picture of what they can't see, right? You're there at the race, you can see what's going on. The listeners at home can't, whether they're listening on a standard radio or in their car on Sirius XM. They can't see. So it's your job to paint the picture in the most descriptive but yet concise way possible. And it was a challenge, because coming from television, I didn't have to do play-by-play radio style to where you're painting the picture, with every word, and you can let moments breathe and let people kind of see what's going on. So that was the biggest challenge for me. And I think MRN, really shaped me as a broadcaster quickly, because you're training yourself to learn, better vocabulary and to say things not only in the most descriptive way, but in the shortest way possible to get to the point and move on. And so I'd say that's probably the biggest difference is, NBC, you have a little bit more resources. So, when I was doing that race at Road America for IMSA, I not only had a pit producer who I was able to communicate with, he was able to help me on, who's pitting when, and kind of giving me some nuggets about drivers that may be having issues that I can't see. But I also had some utility folks with me on pit road. One was holding a monitor so I can see what's going on the broadcast, and I was able to kind of understand the storylines a little bit more, where MRN, it's just you on pit road. If you have something, it's your responsibility to get a hold of the producer, through the two-way radio, and let them know that you have something on the driver that the booth guys are talking about, so you can get that nugget of information to the fans. And so You're a little bit more independent with MRN. So each has their own challenges. Obviously, NBC, it's a little bigger of an audience, on television. And obviously they can see you. So, you can't be looking down at your notes, or when you're on camera, you kind of have to have that sense of ad lib or memorization to accurately relay the information on camera versus, with radio, it's nice because nobody's seeing you, so you can read something on your notes or be looking elsewhere. So, so they each have their own challenges, but, the MRN side, I really enjoy the group of people that they have. They're super talented. Growing up, obviously, I'm not super old, so I was around for all the television races, but I remember as a kid, turn on MRN and mute the TV and listen to guys, like Barney Hall and Ken Squire call these races. So it's been a privilege to be a part of the Blue Polo crew, and, it carries a lot of pressure with it too. They're the most respected, broadcast entity, that's been around forever, and you want to do a good job every time you travel with them and go to a race. So I always make sure I'm prepared and, I do the best job I can. So it's a lot of fun, a great group of guys and girls to work with, and looking forward to an even busier 2022.
That's great to hear. Have you witnessed any driver feuds at all?
It's funny. I always seem to miss out on those. Dylan always gets the really good ones. So obviously this year Dylan got to be involved with the Kevin Harvick and Chase Elliott squabble at Bristol and a few others in the past. No, I haven't been in the middle of any. I'd say the closest was probably Texas of last year in the playoffs for the Truck Series. Johnny Sauter got wrecked, I think, a car that got into Stuart Friesen, and Stuart I had the chance to interview at the Care Center, and he let some curse words go, some profanity, had to apologize for that. But I mean, it's a part of the sport. It's the emotions. Obviously in that same race too, Ben Rhodes had hooked, I think it was Christian Eckes, really hard on the front straightaway, and Eckes flipped him off on the front straightaway, and Ben Rhodes was pretty heated after the race about kind of the retaliation he got from some other drivers. So I wasn't in the middle of any two drivers, but definitely heard the after effects of certain run-ins on the racetrack, and it's just something you have to navigate. It's part of the sport. You don't want to, you want to let the drivers tell the story. You don't want to talk too much. You don't want to say anything to kind of sway what they're going to say. You just need to ask them the simple what happened, let them describe, let them paint the picture, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to do a better job than I will. So it's kind of been my experience.
Definitely. I was surprised with how mad Harvick was after that race. Like, that was the angriest I had seen him in years, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you can think back to, when he was running RCR stuff and in the 29 and, getting into it with Ricky Rudd at Bristol. I mean, but you're right. In recent years, he hasn't. Kevin Harvick's really had to step up as now really the old man of the Cup Series garage. And so while he's a very emotional person, he never takes it out like he used to. And that was the first time, many people saw kind of the old Kevin Harvick. And, we kind of joked and said, Kevin Harvick's mad when that happens because he doesn't usually show that kind of emotion or say stuff like that really anymore. He's pretty even keeled, or if he's frustrated, he'll let you know in a less tempered way. So yeah, it was definitely interesting for sure, and I think caught a lot of people's eye, and I think that's what, obviously in the media, we took that and ran with it, and a lot of stories came out about what kind of retaliation would happen, but both sides handled it perfectly, and I think Kevin's moved on, and he's focused on trying to hopefully win a race in 2022, because it didn't go the way he planned, I'm sure, in 2021.
So yeah. What race was the most fun to cover this past year in 2021?
Well, I'll give you 2. I'd say the most fun from just a never been to this track before weekend experience, I'd say would probably be when I was out with IMSA at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in Monterey, California. Never had been to that NorCal area in my life. Never been to Laguna Seca. I've always heard stories about the corkscrew, but seeing it there in person and the racing that IMSA has there on that track, I think blew me away of the talent that it takes to wheel a prototype or a GTD car around a place like that. So I think that was the most fun, just from a broadcast standpoint of viewing a race and being a part of that. As far as the most entertaining race itself to cover, I would probably say, that's probably early. That's a tough one. I mean, they're all special in their own right? But unfortunately, leading up to this season, I've only done a lot of the the standalone races. So just truck or just Xfinity. Haven't gotten a lot of Cup action yet. I will this year. Stay tuned. I think our schedule's coming out here in the next week or two. And they're putting me on a lot more races, which is good. So I'll get a lot more of those experiences in 2022. But I honestly like the Vegas trip with the trucks because I think they run super tight, the entire race. They usually put on a really good show. And obviously this year being in the playoffs, we had 5 wide for the lead with 10 to go. And you don't get that a whole lot of places anymore. So I think, the Vegas for the trucks was the best as far as being on pit road because there's a lot of different strategies and we had some championship contenders fall out of the race, and so having to catch up with them and see kind of the different emotional sides of things was really entertaining. So Laguna Seca, to sum it up, I think was the best race as far as from a track standpoint, a scenic standpoint, never been there before, and then Vegas for the racing, I think always, especially for the trucks, puts on the show.
I would agree with you. You mentioned the GT cars.
Mm-hmm.
Did you cover the GT America series this year at all, or no?
No, MRN doesn't do that anymore. They kind of have a WEC series, a radio network that covers all like the GTs and things that are a little bit different. I know, I think their championship was in Indianapolis, as well as Ferrari's was this year. So no, we don't get to cover those, unfortunately. I'm just strictly with IMSA. So I do their single make series, which are the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, Mazda MX-5 Cup, the Prototype Challenge, and then your top 2 series, which are your Michelin Pilot Challenge and then the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. So I didn't get to do the GT series that's on its own because that's part of the World Endurance Cup. But still, either way, I've watched some of those races. They're phenomenal. I
saw the one in Nashville, and it was my first GT race, and they were pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just a lot of people don't get exposed enough to those GT kind of races unless you're kind of in the know or in the industry or you obviously love motorsports like you guys do. I'm sure you've watched, but it's a shame that they don't get kind of the public notoriety because a lot of those races go down to the wire. They're a lot of fun to watch, and just the cars are cool. I mean, I love watching GT cars, especially on the IMSA side. Like, where else can you go see a Lamborghini go head-to-head with a Mercedes, with an Audi? I mean, you can't get that anywhere else, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, my first taste of GT America in Nashville, I actually noticed it kind of by accident before the race began, because I was walking through the paddock where I got to interact with drivers, and I smelled some sort of smell that was a combination of fuel and paint, and it was similar to like soap, kinda. And the next thing I remember, there was a sports car, a GT America, which was the TRG car, the Racers group.
Wow, yeah, that's exciting. Cool. It's racing is a very sensory sport, right? The only thing you're not doing really is tasting, unless you do, and that's kind of gross. But things like that will trigger those moments. Like, you always remember that smell, right? Just like I'll always remember the first time I went to a sprint car race, it got sprayed with dirt. I said, wow, that's incredible, the horsepower and the sound and the dirt. And then obviously at the 500, the sights, the pageantry, that almost is better than just watching, in itself. It's just the experience of feeling and hearing and smelling.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Sorry, Doug. I thought you were done.
Oh, no problem. I was just saying, definitely, you can, yeah.
So, do you have any idea of what your early country plans will be? I know there's road course racing at Daytona that will be covered and stuff. Do you have any plans to go to Daytona and help out in Daytona? Or what's your early part of the year looking like?
Yeah, it's actually pretty busy. So I'll be down at Daytona for both the Roar before the 24, and then the following week back at Daytona for the Rolex 24 for IMSA. So I'll kick off my year at Daytona. Before that, like I think I mentioned at the top of the show, 2 days after Christmas, I'm going out to Tulsa for the Tulsa Shootout, which is an event I used to race in when I raced for Micros. Now I'm going to be a part of the Flow broadcast as a announcer and pit reporter. So we're out there for a week, then we come back the week of January 3rd, and I have a few days off just to kind of prep, and then I go back for a week for the Chili Bowl, which is obviously the big granddaddy, the Midget Nationals, and going to get to be a part of that broadcast like I had the last couple of years. And then as soon as I get back from Chili Bowl, then it's Roar and then Rolex. So basically the entire month of January is booked already, which is awesome. I won't be at the Daytona 500 this year. I think my first race for MRN will be the Vegas truck race the first weekend in March. So my February will be nice because I'll kind of ease into things. And when I'm not traveling or doing any of the MRN stuff, I work part-time with NASCAR Productions. So in February, I'll be working on stuff post-Rolex, pre-Sebring for IMSA, editing some digital pieces and kind of getting different projects ready to go for that team that works on those throughout the year. So I'll stay busy, but yeah, no Daytona 500 for me, unfortunately, or the Clash, which would have been cool going to LA and seeing it, but I'm just excited to watch it on TV like I do every year.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. So that's all we have for now. Our time's running short.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys, getting me on, and it's always nice to talk, about racing, right? Especially this time of year when nothing's going on. I've already got the itch to get back after it, even though my fiance is like, let's calm down for a minute and enjoy each other before you get back on the road. So I'm actually here where her mother lives, kind of hanging out. So, but yeah, no, appreciate you guys having me, and looking forward maybe our paths crossing sometime in 2022.
Definitely.
Definitely.
So everyone, let's have a moment of silence in memory of four-time Indianapolis 500 champion Al Unser. In 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone. He was a champion of the sport of IndyCar racing, and we will never forget him.
Yeah, well said. It's been a tough year for the motorsports community. You mentioned it with Big Al and Bobby, and obviously on the journalism side, Robin Miller, the great Robin Miller, and then Bob Jenkins. It's been a rough back half of 2021, but I think the sport is better for all of those that have come before us. So it's been a tough week, but we'll move on and hopefully try to honor their memories the best we can.
Definitely. So everyone, we thank you all for watching this episode of Stories from Motorsports, and we'll see you next week for the next episode.